Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the season has come to an end. The Dodgers got swept by the Diamondbacks in the NLDS. We will talk about, unfortunately, about all of that. We'll talk about, some decisions that were made in this game. Mostly, we'll probably talk about the fact that the offense just didn't show up the whole series. And while the pitching wasn't great, the offense never really gave anybody a chance. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about probably just a big group therapy session. It's not going to be a happy episode, but we love talking Dodgers with you, and we're going to do it again today and every day this offseason. So let's get started with, I guess, the first Locked On Dodgers of the offseason. Let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, we apologize that you picked such a sad occasion for the first episode, but we'll try to make it worth your while anyway. I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like you are. That's why we look so sad. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And Vince, when back in the 90s, when you were just a toddler, I used to joke with my friends that at least the Dodgers loved me enough to not get my hopes up. They just sucked all year. Unlike the Braves, who would get their fans up and then crush their hopes, get their hopes up and then crush them in the postseason. And I used to joke that I was glad I was a Dodger fan and not a Braves fan because I never got my hopes up. I didn't really actually believe it then, and I definitely don't believe it now. I would much rather be a fan of a team that gets my hopes up and gives me a good season. But I don't remember being this sad in the 90s. Like, oh, it's August and the Dodgers are out of it again. Okay, let's move on. But October sadness, it hits different,
Yeah. August sadness is really just apathy at that point, I would imagine. Whereas October sadness is legitimately a feeling because you do have, like, even in years that you don't think the Dodgers have enough to win the World Series, the fact that they're in the playoffs means that by definition, they have a chance to win the World Series. And, this year probably encapsulates that a little bit better where you didn't know if the Dodgers had enough to win the World Series. We definitely talked ourselves into it. We definitely could see a path to it. Which is more based on like what's happened in the postseason in the past for other teams, more so than what's happened in the postseason for the Dodgers specifically. And, we had even talked ourselves. Well, I mean, before the series, we, thought the Dodgers were going to win. We believe they had the better team. And, on paper, they still have the better team. That's not, incorrect. That's not incorrect. But congrats to the Diamondbacks because they played better. They were the better team this series. And, Dave Roberts said after the game that they, outplayed them in every facet of the game. And really there's no argument against that other than even the Dodgers' best offensive player, Will Smith, the D-backs the catcher on the other side was a bit better offensively because his hits put runs on the board.
Yeah, I would guess the Dodgers bullpen, if you take out Emmett Sheehan, consider him a starter, like a piggybacker. Other than that, I think the Dodgers bullpen maybe slightly outperformed the D-backs bullpen, but every Diamondbacks pitcher performed well. And whether that's because they are facing the Dodgers or the Dodgers sucked because the D-backs pitchers performed well, I don't know. But the fact is, we said, you are pretty well known around these parts for getting heartburn about the Dodgers offense in October. And unfortunately, they lived up to that. And we've said several times, it won't matter what the pitching does if the offense doesn't show up. And the fact is, the Dodgers allowed 4 runs in each of the last 2 games. The Dodgers averaged 5.5 runs a game all season long. 4 runs, and we talked about this all year. If you can hold the other team to 4 runs, Dodgers are going to win most of the time. And this time, they didn't. They only scored 2 runs in each of the 3 games. And, the last 2 games, they at least, because the pitching wasn't quite as much of a debacle, they made it close. They got the tying run to the plate. They even got the go-ahead run to the plate. But ultimately, like the Dodgers, other than the first 3 innings, top of the first, second, and third innings in Game 3 was the only at-bats the Dodgers had all series in which they weren't down by multiple runs already. They had 3 innings of being tied 0-0. And then, the rest of the series, they were down by multiple runs. They were always trying to come from behind, and it didn't happen. And, we've talked about Mookie and Freddie needing to set the tone, and they did set the tone, but not in the way we had been hoping for.
Yeah. And, there's, we talked about it before. Like the Dodgers pitching we knew was not quite where it needed to be, or what wasn't quite up to par, even compared to what they've had in years past. But the way this team won this season was scoring runs, putting up all those runs. And that's why in a normal season of normal Dodger pitching of what we're used to, saying, oh, all they need to do is not allow more than 4 runs and they should win the game. Like we were used to, oh yeah, only a couple runs and, the Dodgers could win, maybe even their offense wasn't ready, but they would win 3-2 or stuff like that. This year was a little bit different where they need the offense. And what it came down to, and this is really what it was with this Dodger team, was Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. They were MVP They're going to finish probably 2 and 3 in MVP voting in the National League. And they had 1 hit in this series. And if you take away Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman from this team over the course of the whole season, this team doesn't make the playoffs. They might not even be 500. And that's really what they look like these last 3 games, is a team that can't really compete with a team that's actually good.
Yeah. And Mookie struggled the whole last month of the season, and we crossed our fingers and hoped that he would get past it in the postseason. Freddie struggled the last week or 2 of the season. He never even did get to the 60 doubles, but the fact, he had 59 doubles. He hit 29 home runs. Like, they had great seasons. Like you said, they're going to finish 2-3 or 2-4 in the MVP voting. Dave Roberts is going to win Manager of the Year. And that's going to be a month from now when they announce those awards. And people are going to scoff because they'll forget that those awards are voted on based on the regular season. Those votes have already been submitted before this series even started. And yeah, it didn't happen. And, we're going to have all off season to talk about why that might've been. I'm seeing this stuff on social media already, and I'm not going to tell anybody how to process their favorite team getting eliminated from the postseason. And so, for the most part, I don't think we'll get too much into that this episode. We will talk a little bit about specifically Game 3, some of the decisions they made or were forced into making or whatever. So yeah, maybe we'll take a break real quick and we'll come back and talk about that stuff. Going to read an ad. Don't hold this Dodgers loss against our sponsors. They're still really good sponsors. And so, yeah, we will be back. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Postseason baseball is here for some teams. For us, baseball season's over, but luckily there's other sports if you care about those things. And you can get in on daily fantasy sports with Sleeper, and you can have a chance to get 100 times your cash in your daily fantasy sports. Baseball is still exciting for some teams. You may be rooting for Corey Seager and the Rangers and want to get in on that, or you may be done and you just want to turn your attention to the NFL or the NBA. But whatever it is, with the Sleeper app, you can pick more or less on stats for players. And if you're right, you make money. It's fantasy sports with a chance to make money, and you can get up to 100 times your payout. Get your picks right, and you can win big. And if you use promo code Locked On, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. So just see Sleeper's terms used for details and check out the Sleeper app today. Hey, we're back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We will be with you every weekday throughout the postseason, Man, my brain isn't ready to accept that the postseason's over.
Well, technically the postseason.
No, the postseason's over, Vince.
We'll be with you.
It's the offseason, yeah. While those other teams are playing in the postseason, we may even talk about some of those games, but we'll be with you all offseason too. We talk Dodgers year-round with you. It'll obviously be a little bit different, not having games to talk about every day, but there's plenty of stuff going on in the offseason, looking back on this past season, looking forward to the next season, looking at free agency, awards, all that stuff. So we'll be with you all off season. I guess I won't remind you to check out the Dodgers on Sirius XM. I mean, that'll come in handy again come March, but for now, you can still listen to this podcast on the SXM app by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you are watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. Again, just fair warning, I probably won't interact a lot. I'm not saying don't be angry and negative, because I know that's how some of you want to process this. I won't interact with that just because I don't want to. I don't want to be mad at other Dodger fans. I'm mad enough at the Dodgers right now. So but we'd love to hear your thoughts. This game, Vince. I guess the biggest question mark was Ryan Pepiot didn't get in the game. He was very good after he came back from his injury this year, and I haven't seen any. I haven't been following since we started recording. I don't know if anybody has asked Dave Roberts about Pepiot, but it was at least kind of interesting. Like we've talked about Pepiot or Lynn to start. Like we were thinking this was going to be a piggyback game. Lance Lynn, Ryan Pepiot. If the offense had shown up, it was easy to picture Lynn and Pepiot taking down the whole 9 innings, and just so that they could have the full bullpen tomorrow for Kershaw's game 4. But Lynn imploded in the 3rd inning, and they went to Caleb Ferguson, and then they went to other people and other people and other people. And in the end, Ryan Pepiot ended up being the only pitcher on the Dodgers roster who didn't pitch in this series, which was kind of interesting, if nothing else, huh?
I mean, arguably one of your top 3 pitchers since he came back from injury, maybe even top 2, just based on how he looked. And, I can understand giving Lance Lynn the start. I don't have any qualms with giving him the start. What I do have qualms with is you cut bait as soon as there's an issue. And 1 home run, maybe not. 2 home runs, that's it. You cut bait right there. Even if whoever you bring in gives up home runs, that's fine. But, Dave Roberts said that they had guys ready, which they weren't ready to pitch. They might have been stretching, but they weren't ready to pitch. That he thought Lynn could get through that stretch of righties right there. And that's why he didn't bring in Ferguson earlier and blah, blah, blah. And to me, it's just like, the way you managed game 2, where Miller came out, obviously he gave up 3 runs in the first, but then sign of trouble in the next inning, like you were done with him. I feel like it should have been the same here. And regardless, we don't know what would have happened, if he pulls them out after 2 homers, after 1 homer, after 3 homers, whatever the case. Maybe playing from down 4 runs is a lot different than playing from down, 2 runs, 3 runs, even though they had opportunities to get those runs. But to me, it's just like, the D-backs had somebody ready the instant Brandon Pfaadt, ran into issues. And he has some huge splits in between second and third time through a lineup. But I feel like if you manage the game 2, like game 7, you kind of mentioned the fact that you're going to manage just like a game 7. I don't think Lance Lynn should have been given the leash of 4 runs.
Yeah, and I see that. The problem for me was the first 2 homers were back-to-back. And so it's like, he's Lance Lynn. You're not going to pull him after 1 homer. And I don't think you're really even going to get somebody warming up after 1 home run. Like when you made the decision to pitch Lance Lynn, you told your offense, hey guys, we're going to need a few runs because Lynn's going to give up a home run or 2, So after the first home run, and I think I wasn't paying super close attention as far as like when they showed the bullpen, but I would assume that Ferguson got up around the time after Marte's second, the second home run, the back-to-back homer. And at that point, it's like, I guess they could have pulled Lynn. I assume Ferguson was ready by the time they were going to the replay review on Moreno's first home run. But do you really like Caleb Ferguson against Gabriel Moreno? Like, it's probably not the matchup you're looking for. So yeah, I think I mostly agree with you that I wouldn't have let him. I would have tried to get him out of there after the third home run. I don't think it would have been realistic to get him out after two, unless you, in that second inning, when he did get into a jam and had to get out of it, if you started thinking then, okay, you know what, we're starting to see the wheels come off. And I think that's where I think Brandon Pfaadt, it was pretty clear that while he was getting outs, he wasn't like, he got 2 swings and misses. Those are like JD Martinez and Max Muncy. One ended an inning and then leading off the next inning, back-to-back strikeouts. That was the only 2 swings and misses he got, I think. And so like, it was pretty clear that Pfaadt wasn't long for the game. Whereas Lynn, it's like, well, he's Lance Lynn. This is kind of what we expected. He's going to, give us some hits. He's going to give up a couple home runs, and hopefully the offense will score 4 or 5 runs for us. I don't know. Like, I probably would have yanked him after 3 innings, but then it's like, well, do you get somebody other than Ferguson warming up, and it's, and maybe that's what they needed to do, is go double barrel in the bullpen. So you have a righty and a lefty, and you can go batter by batter. But when you are thinking about taking out your pitcher in the 3rd inning, the prospect of burning a reliever, not being able to use him because he warmed up and didn't come in the 3rd, that could have come back to bite him. But, ultimately, like you said, the Dodgers scored 2 runs, so it probably didn't matter. But yeah, it's a different mindset when you are down by, like when they scored 2 runs. If it had been 3-2 at that point, it's a little bit different. You don't, I guess maybe that leads into our other talk, was that when it was 3-2 and they had 2 runners on, or 4-2, and they had 2 runners on, they had to pinch hit for David Peralta with Austin Barnes. I don't know if "had to" is the right phrase. They've used Peralta against lefties throughout the season, but Peralta's been bad for a couple months now. And he was just a ground out to second machine tonight. And all in all, Barnes probably did give them a better chance than Peralta did. I might have even gone with Outman, even though Outman obviously was terrible in the series. At least better chance of running into one and hitting a home run than Austin Barnes probably. But Barnes, it's not crazy to think that Barnes could have come up with a big clutch hit there, right?
No, it's not crazy to think, but for me, the issue after the fact became more about Austin Barnes than the decision to put in Austin Barnes. You're Austin Barnes. You're not a good hitter. And you're swinging at the first pitch, which isn't up in the zone. So, what were you expecting to do up there? What was your thought process? What were you expecting to do? If you're going to swing first pitch on a new pitcher and with 2-out rally and everything in that sense, the ball needs to start at your chest.
If it doesn't start at, you can drive to a gap or down the line.
If it doesn't start at your chest, you don't even take the bat off your shoulder. And that bat started, maybe at his stomach or lower, and went even lower because it was a sinker, and it was just a weak ground ball to third base.
Yeah, it was bad hitting. And Barnes, I don't think had an at bat in 2 weeks almost. And so, but I mean, Barnes is usually a little bit more patient than that. You can at least count on him to work a good at bat or something. That definitely didn't happen there. So it definitely fizzled that rally pretty quickly.
And I think it was, it's easy to point out this when they didn't score and when, guys struck out in key situations. But from what we've seen on the Dodgers along, not just this season, but in years past, is pass the buck mentality. And, sometimes we've maybe been critical of it in certain situations. But, Barnes, that inning, the inning where Colton Wong let off with the walk, the pitcher didn't throw 1 strike, 4-ball walk. And then, Mookie Betts, he did throw 2 strikes to Mookie Betts, 2 actual strikes. So it's hard to fault that. But he might have thrown 1 strike to Freddie. Definitely didn't throw 3 strikes to Freddie. And he didn't throw any strikes to JD Martinez. And if they had just not swung that inning, they might have scored a run just based on the pitches we saw. Now, obviously, the guy could have figured it out. I don't even know really the guy, Brian
Kevin Ginkel.
Or Kevin Ginkel. Obviously, he could have figured it out and buttoned up. Once you got 3 balls, maybe, buttoned up, throwing some strikes, whatever the case is. But just what they were swinging at, just, the patience wasn't there. And early in the game, I can understand. It's a young pitcher, Brendan Pfaadt. They've gotten to him before. He wasn't that great in his last postseason start. But they were swinging early and often, and it didn't lead to much hard contact, maybe some solid contact, not really a lot of hard contact. And I think they just played themselves out of their comfort a little bit by swinging a lot more than just trying to pass the buck. And I can understand that makes sense, but also, that's the way they played all season.
Yeah, and they're human beings, and Mookie and Freddie know that the offense depends on them, and they each come up representing the tying run, and it's natural to want to do something, But yeah, it's rough. I guess let's take another break. We'll come back and we will continue this group therapy session. Plenty more to talk about today and in future days. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Modern medical care and treatment are important, but our global supply chains are fragile. Things like pandemics, natural disasters, and foreign travel may cut you off from the treatment you need. I have a wife and 3 kids. We try to be as prepared as possible for emergencies, but medicine has always been a concern of mine, and Jace Medical is a solution. Jace Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get a prescription, life-saving medications right to your door. The Jace case gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. I did it a few weeks ago. It was quick and painless, just a few minutes, a follow-up email from a local doctor, licensed to prescribe medicine in my state, and boom, I was done. I got my case of 5 standard antibiotics just a couple days later. Now they're in our 72-hour kit that we always keep ready. Then they send you the prescriptions from one of their partner pharmacies to one of their partner pharmacies, where your Jace order will be filled, mailed directly to your home. And not only this, you can send your physician a message for answers to treatment-related questions anytime. And now you can get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, we are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We really do love talking Dodgers with you. Obviously, it's not quite as fun tonight, but hopefully it's therapeutic on some level. I guess the good news is it's Christmas season now. For those of you who don't know, according to the Jeff Snider calendar, the 4 seasons are spring training, baseball season, Christmas season, and January. So as soon as the Dodgers are done playing baseball, it's officially Christmas season. So sorry, Halloween, you fall in Christmas season this year. So other than that, though, I wasn't ready for Christmas season quite this early. It's October 11th as we're recording this. This kind of sucks, right, Vince?
Yeah, especially, last year they lost in the NLDS, but game 1 of the NLDS was on October 11th last year, just because, the lockout. And then this year, October 11th, the season is over. But yeah, it's just one of those things where, thinking about it, I don't know. I think I've become a little bit jaded, and not just because of Dodgers, like just based on like what my job is and everything else. And like, I'm not 100% Dodger focused. Like when I go to games as media, I'm not really supposed to cheer and all that kind of stuff. So it feels different to me this year. And it's not, I don't even think it's a matter of, I didn't think they expected them to win or anything. Like I expected them to win this series. I expected them to put up a series in the next series against whoever they played and, maybe win depending how things went. And just, it never went right. Like last year with the Padres, they won the first game. The other games were kind of close and, they had chances. But this year, they were never within more than 2 runs. That they had the tying run and go ahead runs at the plate and maybe on the bases at certain points of the game, but they were never really in it. Other than the fact that they were technically in it based on the number of people that were on base or at the plate.
Yeah, when the Dodgers have lost in the division series, there's always been things that you could point to, like, oh, if that had just gone different. In 2014, there was. The games that never happened, the game 1 where Kershaw had that 7th inning and then the home run to Fat Adams later in the series. It's easy to look back and say, oh, that shouldn't have happened. And 2019, like Kershaw shouldn't have been in that game. The Dodgers should have won game 5 of 2019 NLDS. And last year was maybe the worst. Cause like if the umpire gets the strike call right, then Max Muncy's playing deeper at third base. So Ha-Sung Kim's double down the line is a ground out, like inches, or even like I've talked about before, if Will Smith's line drive right at Jurickson Profar, instead of being a sac fly, if it's 15 feet to the left and it's a 3-run double, the Dodgers win the series probably, like game of inches. This series, like there was nothing, like you could point at, well, if this had gone different, they might have had a chance to get back in the game, but there was no, this moment, if this moment had been different, they would have won the series. And it actually got me thinking about the 2020 NLCS, because if Will Smith doesn't hit that home run off Will Smith, the Dodgers lose game 5. They lose that NLCS in 5 games, and they go down with a whimper. And instead, Will Smith did hit that home run, and the Dodgers win the next game and the next game too, and then they go on to win the World Series. But I would guess if pitcher Will Smith throws that exact pitch to hitter Will Smith 100 times, I would guess hitter Will Smith hits a home run, 5 times? Like it wasn't a bad pitch. It wasn't like, and it's that much. And in 2020, the game of inches worked for us. In 2020, in game 7 of the NLCS, that terrible base running play by Austin Riley and Dansby Swanson, where Justin Turner ends up getting a double play on that, totally turned that game around. And, like game of inches, and it's gone in our favor sometimes, and it hasn't gone in our favor sometimes. This series, though, it wasn't even a game of inches. It was just a game of, man, 3 crappy games.
Yeah, I guess the closest thing you could do is Chris Taylor's ball late in the game, which would have been a homer in 22 of 30 ballparks. But even then, like that ties the game, and that even if they go on to win, last night, that you still have to win 2 more. Like it wasn't a series changer; it was a potential series changer. Not one that directly impacts the series in that moment. It would have been one that had to be followed up by a couple more wins. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's one of the thing that was like just annoying was, obviously we've talked about Mookie and Freddie, and like they weren't even close to hitting home runs or any. Like JD Martinez hit a home run, and then Chris Taylor's was close, but like there wasn't even deep fly ball. Like there was in game 1.
Freddie had one in this game 3, a deep fly out to left,
But even then, it was never like oh man, this. And then even when they got runners on base, like when the situations did come up, Colton Wong was batting, Austin Barnes was batting, that might be conversation. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Like if you listen to today's episode and think about, oh, they didn't talk about this, they didn't talk about that, we're going to talk about it more than likely. And if you have something that you think we might not talk about, definitely send it our way. Like, we know Fire Dave Roberts is something that a lot of people are thinking. We're going to talk about that. We know that the roster construction and, anything of that nature is a topic of conversation. We're going to talk about that. Like Michael Busch, should he have been given more of a shot? Should he have been on the roster? Things like that. Does he give them a better chance offensively? Different things of that nature. Pitching, we can revisit the deadline as many times as we want. And, maybe that's something we do. But of all the pitchers traded at the deadline, like Jordan Montgomery's the only one that did anything relevant. We can go back all the way to the offseason and, maybe Nate Eovaldi's a name that, we might want to consider. But again, that's all after the fact of him pitching well in the postseason, which he has been in.
Dustin Mann, Tony Gonsolin, and Julio and everybody else weren't here for us.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff to get into. It sucks, I think I put out a tweet about that's crazy, or someone the game ended and someone put, no, it's not. We're used to this or whatever, but we're not used to getting swept.
Yeah.
If the Dodgers of the 90s, I was used to seeing the Dodgers get swept as a kid, but not since 2006 have they been swept. And, it's not. It's not fun.
And the fact is, like, the Dodgers won the World Series 3 years ago. The year after that, they beat the team with the best record in baseball in the NLDS. Then they ran out of gas in the NLCS, partly because Kershaw and Muncy both got hurt the last week in the season. They lost the World Series in 2017 and 2018. Like, losing in the first round, it feels like the narrative is that the Dodgers always choke, and they're just terrible in October. But the fact is, that's only true if history started last year. Like 2021, Dodgers, like they weren't terrible in the offseason. And even the series they lost to the Braves, like there were at least 2 come from behind wins for the Braves. It's like the Dodgers were in those games in the NLCS, had a chance to go to the World Series there. Like it was, it's really having these 2 series in back-to-back years, I think is maybe warping people's view of history, or at least like giving it more of a sense of helplessness. Like it's never going to change. This is how it is now. But I don't know. We all process things differently, and it sucks for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, like I said, we're going to talk about it. These last 2 years, is there a need for some kind of change philosophically? I feel like we talked about it last year. We'll talk about it again this year. So,
yep. And we'll probably all disagree on things, and that's okay. We all come from the same place of loving the Dodgers. We want the Dodgers to be successful, and we all have some of the same ideas and some different ideas on how that's best accomplished. So we will get into all of that, but not tonight, because we are done for tonight. You got anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
Thank you, fans. I mean, we appreciate you guys. Obviously, we're not going anywhere, but it is different talking regular season. We might lose some of you, maybe. I hope we don't. There's a lot to talk about this offseason, and hope you guys stick around for it.
I hope so too. I did wipe my eye once, and I'm doing it again. It is watering. I don't think I'm crying, but my eyes are watering. So, maybe I don't know what crying is, but anyway, that'll do it for today. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. DMs are open in all of those places. Thank you especially to our everydayers for making us your first listen. If you're an everydayer and you have friends or family who you think might like the show, please tell them about it. You can email us at lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.